once again. So we started processing our form inputs in database. I think we were still on the process PHP processing script. Exactly where we stop. Please confirm. I believe this is where we stop, right? Okay, so we will just quickly complete this project. I'll give us an assignment on a different forms. We are going to create another PHP form, follow the same process to be able to process the user inputs into the backend database. So that will be your assignment. So just to recap briefly on the part of the code we have written, I told us that I think we have a form here. This is actually the form that we want whatever information users are going to input in this process to process to the back end. We want a situation whereby when the users type in their name, their email, their phone number, message, and click on submit, the information will be sent to this word contact team. Hope you understand. That is what we are trying to achieve. So by the time we are done with the code writing, and we go back to that form and fill it and click on submit, see the ID, that is the order at which the records are coming here, and the name and the email and the phone number. So once we are able to achieve that, we can now see that we have completed the processes involved for us to be able to process PHP form input to the backend. All right, so you understand the communication. I know some of us were not here, so that is why I'm trying to. So we started by creating a connection script. And by now, I expect that we know the reason why we created this connection script. What we did is that we stored some database information in different variables. The host into this variable. We store the username into this variable. Then we store the password, empty password, because this is connection. It does not require password. But by the time we have done hosting, to create the password so that people do not access the back end without password. But this one is just a local connection. If our form is submitting, so that by the time we host it online, we'll be rest assured that this is the name of the database. Then here we wrote a simple PHP script. We created a variable. We created a PHP object, and then with this function, then we supply the variable value into it. SQLi is to examine, is to check whether all this exists. And once it checks and everything exists, then if statement. If it doesn't, if there's any error while accessing this variable value, then it will output what? Connection failed. If there's no error, it will output what? Connection successful. Like I said, when you are done with this, you can run it and check whether you'll be getting connection failed or what? Connection successful. So let's right click and it's in a different browser. Check. So you must get a successful message like this before you proceed to processing saying is that now that we have established connection between the front end and the back end, we can use that connection. Is just like a link that you have created. Now that is an established link, you want to leverage on that connection to begin to process the user's inputs. So when I say user input, this is what I'm referring to. Whatever the user type in here. Now, I want you to pay attention very well. So what we are doing here is that we include once. Include one means you are recognizing the whole of this code in your processing what? File. Why? Because you cannot process the input to the back end what? The connection file. So instead of us rewriting the whole of this or copy the whole of this, paste it here, paste it in the process file. So we just use a PHP function called what? Include once to acknowledge that. I hope that's clear. What we are saying is that while you are running these scripts, you must connect to the back end. So pick it from here, and then once you connect to the back end, if server, this is a global variable, request method posts. Because in our form, you can see that the method we put here, that is what we are simply communicating here. That the method of processing or collecting and sanitizing the input should be what? Method. Which other method again I told us? Outside post, we have get, right? And get is for processing file where security is not a priority. When you are processing sensitive data to the server, you use what? Post method because it's more secure. So what we are doing here is that we are creating different variables and using this PHP trim function from the form. What we are saying is that what from this form, PHP from that file, come here and collect what this input and store it in what this. Go to that form again, collect the email input, then store it in what email. Go to that form again, collect the phone input and store it. So that's what we did here. I hope that's clear. Good. Now here we are checking. We are trying to apply some basic validation. What is validation? Validation is just like you are placing some what you not expect. I hope you are following. Because I just want everybody to be on the same page. That's what I say about repeating, because we just want to complete the project and ensure that it's working perfectly. So that's what we did here. Here we are checking for empty. And we are involving PHP function. You see this parenthesis bracket. What does that tell you? That this empty is what? Is a function, right? That is inside what? If statement. So we are collecting different. What we are doing here is that we are indirectly saying that what? None of this input must be empty. Let me use the front MP. None of this input. Let's say somebody fill here. He or she did not fill here and fill here. Because what? We are checking for emptiness. We are saying that what? Each of the inputs must be filled before the form can submit its value to the back end. That is why we have to call them empty. If empty, what have we programmed that PHP should notify us? What you have once you try submitting, filling a particular input, and you get this message, you know that okay, there's a particular one. So if I don't want to check message, maybe they can submit without message. Somebody can fill the form and submit it without message. What will I do? I will remove this word message what check. Because sometimes, depending on the kind of website we are developing, there are some websites that when you over-validate things, make it difficult for people. For example, now you have a form that somebody can fill to buy a product from you. You are not putting all the validation. If you don't have email, you cannot buy a product. doctors. Just imagine that. I don't think that would be nice. Would that be nice? No. But if you have to do with maybe enrollment for the course, you understand? You will insist because people need the course and the other option. So here, look up here. Anytime you say this exclamation mark, I don't know if you are seeing the code very well. Anytime you are seeing this exclamation mark, it means what? Not. Under PHP operator, I thought of not. So which means that we are now consulting another PHP function called what? Filter underscore variable or var. And what is it going to do? This is to check if a user, if the format of the email the person is entering does not allow the global standard. What is the global standard? An email must have what? At, right? Let's say prosper at. So what this function will check is that once you try writing an email in that form, maybe you try writing an email like this, instead of you writing something like this, prosper at, maybe you now omit the at. That function will detect that that is not the standard word email format. So it will insist that you must what? Follow the principle. So where the user tend to enter email format that does not align the user will get a message that says what? Invalid what? Email format. And then what? Exit. Now we have to continue from we want to check email already exists. What we want to check here, this is another level of validation. Now, maybe we don't want people to submit, maybe someone that have filled the form before. Let me go to the back end. Someone that have filled the form before, probably the person's email have been what deposited. And the person without knowing, trying to fill that same form. So we want to write a PHP script that will always contact the back end table immediately when the person try to submit and check whether the email the person is using has what is submitted before to avoid duplicating what email in that database table. That is where we want to continue from. So if you have updated your code, then you can continue with me now. Now, coming outside this, remember that we are still inside the main calling bracket. We are still inside. This one is the one. Take note of it. So all these ones they are like sub if under the what? The main what if. So here I will write what if what did I say we are checking? If email is already what existing. Sorry. So for that we are going to create a variable. Let me put it here. We are going to create a variable called what? Check query. So this is SQL. We are going to combine SQL query. So how do we create variable if you start with what? $sign, right? Then I will say what? Check query. Check query. And what did I say is query? Query is you asking, right? Asking the system to do something for you. To check query, you are going to write SQL query statement. And how does it look like? You write what? This quotation. And it means you write a string, right? All the SQL command in the string. And what is the SQL command? We want the SQL to go to the table and call right there and check if what the email exists. So how do we speak that? We say select. So select is an SQL query statement that fetches from a database. Select from. Now select asterisk means what? Select all. That asterisk means what? Select all record. That is what? Go to the table at the back end, call every record because I want to check among them whether the email this person is submitting has been what submitted. So select all from. So this from is another keyword that specifies the name of the table where it must have probably have what. Remember, what is the name of our table? If I go to the bracket, what is the name of the table? It's DB underscore what? Sorry, it's contacts, right? It's contacts. So now, which means that we will now select what? Select from the name of the table, which is what? Contacts. That's why I told us that when you are coming to the front end, you must know the name of what? Your table and the name of what? Database. Select from this table. Now, in SQL, what we know as if, which is a conditional statement, is called what? Where. So where is a conditional statement? So select what? Where email is equals to question mark. Where email is equals to question mark. I will explain that to you. Where email is question mark. Now, whenever you say this question mark, it means that you are calling what? The email data type is what? String. Are you following? So you can decide to say, okay, you don't want to use this method. You can say where is equals to what? Where email is equals to what? Email. Using this, I will explain the other concepts in the next project. Because I'm still going to work with another form, but I will use another condition. So now, once you have written this, so that is the query statement that will go to the back end. Check that what the email is equal to the email the users are entering or the user is entering at that moment. So once it goes to the back end, see that the email the person is entering is not the same, then it will what? Do something. So whenever SQL query is written, it must be what? It must be executed. It must be tested. And how do you test it? You now write that testing code. And that testing code is that I want to create it and store it in the variable. Let's say dollar. I'm calling what? The con. Remember that what? This way, for you to check, there must be a connection. You must what? Contact the connection what? Variable. Because in the connection variable, that's where you have the host, the database name, and the rest of them. All right? So now, what I'm going to do here is that I think before this, let me create a new variable, which is called what? Statements. Statements. Just repeating it. Then equals to, then contact the connection file, what? $con, as we have created it before, $con. Then prepare it using the arrow method. Prepare it, that is this code I'm writing now. If the email does not exist, then prepare to send whatever the user is what imputing to the back end. That is what this line code is going to do. So I'll say prepare. Prepare is a function. You can say now prepare query. Right? So it's a function in PHP. What is it going to prepare? Prepare this particular one, because this is where you are executing the query command. Prepare this particular word query. So what you are doing here is that you are examining whether you are implementing this line of code. Whenever SQL query statement is written in your PHP script, what follows is what? A code to execute it, to check, to implement it. And that is what the whole of this code is saying. You can say that what? The whole of this function, we are giving it what? The whole of this code. That is what? Implement this line. Go to the back end. Check whether there is a table called contact. And then if there is a table called contact, check, compare the email the person is entering with what? The email that if it exists, then it's going to output the message. So this one ends here. This one ends here. So the next one is that you will now begin to bind. You will now bind. Now this binding is like you now begin to what? To contact the email in the table. So what I'm going to do here is that I will just create I will just call that statement which is this very one. Here it is. This very one here. Then you now use the same arrow function. And then you now where did I stop? Okay, good. You now write what bind. So that bind, I will explain it by the time I'm done with it. And I'm using this function, parameter. So that para means what? Parameter. Now, you don't want to talk about the value. Once that SQL statement is executed, now you want to what? Bind it with the values. You want to acknowledge the values. That is what this bind parameter is going to do. What are you binding? You are binding a string. You are binding the value that are stored in the email variable. This is where you are going to call the email from. Because this email, this particular post will have sent the email from the
so there's no point of you contacting the HTML form again because this code will have called the email quality. So from here now, what I will just do here is to identify that what I'm calling is a string by putting that word S. You just put a comma. And call the variable that is holding the email, which is $what email. So that is what you are binding. That's what you are binding. Then after that, you end this here. So now you will not execute it. Remember that what this line of code is to execute this line. Why this line of code? Once this one have executed and everything is okay, this one will now what? Establish contact between the email and the email the user is trying to submit. Now, to execute this very one that you just wrote now, you come down and say what? The same variable statements. Same variable statements and variable statements execute arrow, then execute. So you use another PHP function called execute. This is how execute what? The parameter. Where is the parameter here? The parameter is this. So what am I going to put here? What I'm putting here is nothing because I have the parameter already. So I'm putting nothing there. So I will not come here finally and say variable results because I want to get the output. Variable results. Variable results is equals to this particular execution, which is the statements, and then get results. So we're now using another function, get results, because we need to get an output. And what result are we getting? We leave it what? Empty. All right? So, but now we have to write another function that we check all the, because we have not submitted record, I will check all the rows. What we are saying is this. So that it doesn't come here and check only one row and see that, oh, the email does not exist. So we want to write a function or a statement. If the table is having 100 records already submitted, and we are checking whether inside that table with that 100 record, we want to know whether what this email exists. So we are telling PHP that what you should check all the record, all the rows. That is the code I want to write now. Check all the rows. So to write that code, what I'm going to do while I am still inside here, so I will now say what if I will use if statement. If results, which is this result, if what results, if results, arrow, if result is number row, that's what number of row is greater than 0. That is what, so that you start from row 1. Because greater than 0 is what? 1, 2, 3. So this is a way of mandating PHP to ensure that it checks from what? Number 1. So if I put greater than 1, what would that be? Start from where? Row 2. So that is what? Greater than 0, so that you search for what? Row 1. All right? So now once you have achieved that, so remember that this is if statement, so remember the code block. What will happen? If you check from row 1 and there is what? The email that the user is trying to submit existing, then it will output something. So that is what I want to put in the word, the code block, the curly bracket. So I'll say, okay, if that happened, if we check through this, and there is a place, there is one of the rows where the user has submitted the email, then I'll put what? This email. This email. This email already exists. So you can decide to jump the whole of this part, which means that you are given room for code to submit what? Information. But we are trying to ensure that if Mr. A has submitted his or her file and Mr. B comes and is trying to use the email Mr. A has used, there should be a notification. There should be a contact that will tell Mr. B that, hey, this email that you are trying to submit, you cannot because someone has already what? Used it. That is what happened even in when you are creating a Facebook account or creating email account, right? Once you try writing a name that somebody have used, what would they tell you? You can't use this name again. So something like this is happening. Checking their database and letting them know that, okay, you can use this or you cannot use it. So now once we have done that, so if everything is in order, if, for example, it checked and there is no such email, then it will not proceed and insert the record. But if it check and there is such email, then it will hold the person on and say what? This email what? Exists. So I'll bring in what? Else. We can see the reason why we're learning those else. Else. So this else statement is when the program check and such email does not exist. So how will the person, what will not happen where the email does not exist? What will happen? Before we proceed to insert the record inside the table, and that is what we want to write. Else, so let me use comment, insert, else, insert. So once there is no such email, then insert what? Data. So how do you now write code that will insert the data now? That's the next step. So I'll now create a variable called what? Insert. A variable called insert query. A variable called insert query, and then equals to. So here I'm going to write another SQL query statement that we do what? I will come to this place here because all the values will have, came from the form. This post method, through the help of this tree function, will have collected the user input from the form and store them in their various variables. So which means that at this point, when we are writing this code now, we are assuming that the name the person is entering is saved here. The email the person is entering is saved here. The message the person is entering is saved here. So from our code here, we will not be collecting them from that variable, not go to the form. Anybody getting me? So now from here, we will now say, okay, query, write the query statement. Insert is another SQL word keyword. Insert. Insert is another SQL word keyword. Into is another keyword. Into which table? What's the name of our table? Contacts, right? So what we are saying that where there is no email that exists, then go to insert the record into this word table. So insert into what? This table. And the heading, the column, pay attention here. The columns. Now let's take us to the back and look at this here. Now, about inserting this record into the table. Now let's go to the back end and check. How many columns do we have here? This ID will be generated here, right? This ID is not coming from the form. The details that will come from the form start from where? Name, right? So inside the name, inside what? Name column. Inside the email, inside what? Email column. Inside what? So you want to mention this column now. How do we mention them? That is what I want to do here now. And I want to mention them in this. Remember that what? Let me close this here so that it won't confuse us. Inside here, you call those columns. You are not going to acknowledge them as string. You just call them according to the order. Name, the column at the back end that the record be going to. That's what you are saying now. Inside what? Name, and then what? Email, insert record into what? Email column. How many of them are we going to mention here? You come at what? Remember that we added what again? We added message that time, right? So we now also add what? Our message, the way we type it. Message. All right, so we have acknowledged. Now, the values that are going into those, you come outside and write what? Values. Values are to be processed into those columns. So what you did here now, you just acknowledging that we have this column at the back end table. Now the values are going to be coming from where? From this variable. So now how do you acknowledge the value? You come outside it like this. You come outside it like this, and then you will now open another word bracket like this just to call the value. The values are the variables. The values are the variables. So we need to understand that. So the variable, are going to call them like this. Look up. Using the question mark. That question mark means what? They are string. So I will put the question mark. Like I said, the next project I will use another concept where you don't want to use sign like this to represent string. So we can use the string direct. So I will use command to separate them. I will say what? I'm asking a question. I don't know what is submitted yet. So how many inputs are we expecting? How many value are we expect to submit into this code? 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So I will have the question mark into how many places? 4 places. Separating them with what? Comma. Just be okay with this. The next one, I believe it to be clearer because we use the direct variable instead of using this system. Now, I will now end it here with a semicolon. It's here with semicolon. That is after the string. After the string, that is where you are ending the semicolon. So I'll go to the next line. So the next, I told that anytime you write query statement, you must execute it. Because this is query statement. Look at this here. When we wrote this one, we contacted connection file and prepare it and execute it. We bind it, we collected the parameter, then we bind it, and then we execute. So that same process will be involved here now. So here I will now come and say, okay, the same $$st, because it needs to be executed. Then $connection file, that is we are contacting connection file, but there's no way we can execute without establishing connection. Then arrow, what? Prepare. We have to prepare the query. Prepare the query. What query are you preparing? Let me know whether you are following. What is the query you are preparing? This is it here now. The way we did the other one, Control C, and then put it inside. That's the query that you are prepared to execute. All right. So now, once you have done that, you end it here. So this one we execute that query. So once you bind the query, you must bind it. So are you the same word? S, you must bind it. So the same arrow. What are the parameters we are binding? Those words, string, that will represent with what? How many question mark? 4, right? So now I will now interpret them to the word SSS means string. SSS means string. Now, all of them are string. All of them are what? String. All of them are string. So what I'm going to do, I will now say that inside the parameter, put them in string. I will do 3s, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4s because of the 4 inputs that we have here. So I'm binding the value the users are going to be submitting. I'm connecting them. I'm tying them with the column at the back end so they will know the right place to go. That is what we are making. So after that, you will now use a comma to acknowledge them. Put a comma here first. Then start acknowledging the variable that have those values. The first one is variable what? Name, right? Followed by what? what? Email, right? Comma, followed by what? Variable what? Comma, followed by what? Variable what? Message. So once I've done that, then I'll end my code here. So the last part of the code is that we need to execute. Remember, each time, remember the process, when you write SQL statement, you prepare it with the prepare function. You bind the parameter with the what? The bind underscore what? Parameter, and then you execute it. That's what we did here also. Look at this here. We prepare this, we bind, we execute, and then we got results. So the same thing here. What is remaining here now is what? Using if statements. Say what? If, using if statements, if what? So we have to check if everything is okay. If dollar statement, if dollar statement, arrow, execute parameter, right? Then we open the curly bracket because we want to get an output, just to know if everything went well. Echo, let's say what? Registration successful or what? We can say what? Form submitted. Submitted successful. Form submitted what? Successful. So now, else, what about if you do not submit? Something can go wrong that can make it not to submit. Else, that's why I was saying that we should understand those control structure. You can see that we are using the control structure here. Else, what happened? Else, echo error. Echo what? Error. Error. We have to use the error function. Echo error. We concatenate it with what? Sorry. We concatenate with period with the dollar statement. St empty. Then we want to link it with the error function. Function that should output what? Error. Output error. Then you end it. So at the end of the day, you have to close all those statements that you open. And where are you closing them? You are closing them inside here before the last one. Don't go and close them inside here. You are closing them inside here. Remember, this is the last one. So how do you close them? You close the statement. If you don't close it, you keep running. Okay. So I'll say what? This arrow and then close. Use this. Close and then this. So how many statements did we open? We created two statements, right? Two SQL query statements that we checked. So you put it 2 times. Control C. See, how do I look at this here? This is where we created one query and we created what? Statement. This is where we created another query and we have also that is why we are closing 2 of them. So that brings us to the end. Now the last stage now is for us to go and feed that format whether we are going to get error. If we get error, we will now start debugging. Debugging here is very serious, so that sometimes you have to combine AI, ChatGPT to know how to rectify things. It's part of what you need to learn. So if you write your code and it's giving you what you expected, you should know as a tech expert, you should know platform where you can debug. Like I said, maybe one of the class, I will show us how you may not even be the one to write all these things. If you need all this code now, you just go to ChatGPT, provided you know your prompts. You get the code and plug it here. You have to go through learning process. I'm doing this with you because we are learning. Normally, I want the project. I won't write this code myself. Once I have my form input, I know what to tell ChatGPT that, okay, based on this number of inputs, give me PHP processing scripts that does this, sharp, get it done. So my work is just to, because PHP can never go and create this thing for you. That's why you have to follow the classroom. PHP cannot come to the back end and create this for you. All those processes you follow to create this table, what's it called? ChatGPT will not do it for you. You have to come here and establish all this. Then at some point, you will not see what assist. So let's quickly go and fill that form and check what we have done, whether we are in order. So let me run the form. I think we opened it before. So let me fill the form now. Let's say my name is Prosper. And my email is this. And my phone is this. Then my message is what? Welcome. So, okay. So if I click on submit, what do you get? Summary and what? Form what? Submitted what? So people were still getting some error. That's why I told you that what debugging in PHP is a serious matter. Now, you need to know how to interpret this error, fatal error, uncut error. My SQL object is already what? Closed. So the issue from that close. So now, what matters now is that the next we are going to learn is that after submitting, if it submits successfully, reverts the user back to the form in case they want to fill again. You are taking it gradually. But let's go and check whether whether it's a minor error, whether it is an error that actually stops the record from what entering the back end table. So I'll come here now and what refresh. Alpha, can you see the record here? So now I will not debug why am I getting that error. But like I said, that error shouldn't be an issue because I don't want to teach us this. The next project we will add what we call what after the form has been submitted. Redirect the user to a particular page, maybe to the page where they were filling the form. So let's go and fill again. Let's go and fill again. The next person. Try to use the same email so that we'll get that statement we're writing, whether it will detect that well, the email is already existing, isn't it? Let's go and check because this is how you check the validation you program. So now let's go back here and check again. I will launch this again, open in a new browser. Now let me try fill it again. You know, we did not validate that. If you check whether the name is duplicated, right? Or the name exists. So, well, let me just use different name. Let's say what? Now, coming to the email, I'm trying to use the same email. I want to see whether that validation code is working. And then the phone number, I want to choose another number. Let's say this. Then the email, I want to say what? Thank you. Sorry, the message. Thank you. And then I click on submit. What did this say here? Look at it. This email already exists. Perfect. So which means that our program is working. So like I said, in that next class, we will now program where the user get this instead of just exiting, because that's what we put them now, right? We will now say that take them towards a page to go and refill again. But ordinarily, which means that without you programming that, the user will now be the one to use his discretion to know that, okay, let me go back to the form again. But we will have to program it in our next section that once they get that information, return them here automatically to fill again so that they can enter different email. So this is where I stop. So I'm going to leave the script on the screen. So you can now write everything, complete your code, make sure that it's working before you leave here. This is not assignment. So when you come back next time, we are going to look at another one again. But I'm going to use different methods. But we're going to design another form. Then follow the same process, but different set of people to process. So at the end of the day, you not choose which one is easier for you, but I believe that one will be. a little bit easier. But I know the reason why I started with this first. Let me leave the code, start updating your script.